Nothing says family togetherness quite like the smell of burnt turkey and the searing stench of marital decay. I'm Tom Rourke, 42 years old, and I manage Henderson's auto shop on the south side of town. Today's Thanksgiving, which also happens to be my daughter Maddie's 19th birthday. Double the joy, double the forced smiles, and apparently double the reasons for my wife Lisa to act like she'd rather be anywhere else on earth. "Tom, the gravy's lumpy again," Lisa snapped from the kitchen, her voice carrying that special tone she reserved for when I disappointed her, which, according to her recent behavior, was pretty much always. I stirred the gravy with more enthusiasm than it deserved, watching Lisa bustle around our cramped kitchen like a caffeinated tornado. She'd spent 3 hours getting ready for what was essentially a family dinner, complete with full makeup and that new dress she claimed was just something old I found in the closet. Right, something old that still had tags on it. "Looks fine to me," I said, tasting the wooden spoon. "Better than last year's concrete mixture." Lisa shot me a look that could freeze antifreeze. "Very funny. Just try not to embarrass us when everyone gets here, okay?" Everyone. That meant my sister Janice, who'd been divorced for 2 years and had opinions about everything. Lisa's work friends Heather and Trish, who gossiped like it was an Olympic sport. And of course, Maddie's boyfriend Tyler Groves, the golden boy college student who looked like he'd stepped out of a catalog for entitled jerks. The doorbell rang, saving me from whatever cutting response Lisa had brewing. "I'll get it," I called, wiping my hands on the dish towel. Janice stood on the porch, holding a pumpkin pie and wearing her trademark smirk. "Happy Turkey Day, big brother. You look like you've been wrestling with that bird." "The bird won," I said, letting her in. "Fair warning, Lisa's in one of her moods." "When isn't she?" Janice whispered, then raised her voice as Lisa appeared. "Lisa, you look fantastic. New dress?" The forced pleasantries continued as more guests arrived. Heather showed up with her usual sharp-tongued commentary about everything from the weather to the neighbor's lawn decorations. Trish followed behind, nodding along like a bobblehead doll. Then Tyler arrived, all confident swagger and perfect teeth, kissing Maddie like he was marking his territory. I watched from the kitchen doorway as Tyler made himself at home, charming Lisa with compliments about her cooking and her appearance. Too many compliments, if you asked me. And the way Lisa laughed at his jokes. Genuine laughter I hadn't heard directed at anything I'd said in months. "Dad, can you help me with the candles?" Maddie appeared beside me, holding a box of birthday candles. She looked beautiful, all grown up in her college girl confidence, but I could see the stress around her eyes. Having your birthday on Thanksgiving meant sharing the spotlight, and this year felt especially chaotic. "Of course, kiddo. 19 candles coming up." As I helped arrange the candles on her chocolate cake, I caught snippets of conversation from the living room. Lisa and Tyler were discussing some movie they'd both seen, sharing inside jokes and finishing each other's sentences. When had my wife and my daughter's boyfriend become such good friends? "Have you noticed Mom acting weird lately?" Maddie asked quietly, echoing my thoughts. "Weird how?" "I don't know. Different. She's been texting constantly, staying late at work, buying new clothes. She even asked me about Tyler's class schedule last week. Said she wanted to surprise him with lunch sometime." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. A cold feeling settled in my stomach, but I kept my voice casual. Maybe she's just trying to get to know him better. You know how your mom is about making everyone feel welcome. Maddie didn't look convinced, but she nodded and carried the cake to the dining room. Dinner was a masterpiece of forced conversation and awkward silences. Lisa had outdone herself with the presentation. Everything looked perfect, like something from a magazine. She kept jumping up to refill drinks and adjust serving dishes, playing the perfect hostess while I carved the turkey and tried to ignore the growing tension in my chest. "So, Tyler," Janice said, spearing a piece of sweet potato, "what's your major again?" "Business administration," Tyler replied with that confident smile. "I'm planning to get into corporate management after graduation, maybe start my own company someday." "Ambitious," Heather said. "Lisa, you must be so proud to have such a driven young man dating Maddie." Lisa beamed. "Tyler's wonderful. So mature for his age. We've had some really interesting conversations about his future plans." "Oh, have you now?" I said, perhaps a bit too sharply. "When exactly have you two been having these heart-to-hearts?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Lisa's cheeks flushed slightly. "When he comes to pick up Maddie, of course. We chat while she's getting ready. Is that a problem?" "No problem at all," I said, forcing a smile. "Just curious about my wife's sudden interest in business administration." Tyler cleared his throat. Actually, Mrs. Rourke has been really helpful. She knows a lot about the corporate world from her HR experience. She's given me some great advice about networking and professional development." "How thoughtful of her," I muttered. The conversation moved on, but I found myself watching Lisa and Tyler more closely. The way she laughed at his stories, how she made sure his wine glass never went empty. The brief moment when their hands touched as she passed him the rolls, and neither of them pulled away immediately. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe the stress of work and the holiday chaos was making me see things that weren't there. But 30 years of marriage had taught me to read Lisa's moods, and something was definitely off. After dinner, while everyone gathered in the living room for coffee and Maddie's birthday cake ceremony, I volunteered to start cleaning up. The kitchen gave me a perfect vantage point to observe the group dynamics without being obvious about it. Lisa and Tyler sat on opposite ends of the couch, but I noticed how they kept glancing at each other during conversations. When Heather told a particularly funny story about her neighbor's holiday decorating disaster, they shared a look and smiled at exactly the same moment, like they had their own private joke. "Tom, come sing happy birthday," Maddie called from the living room. I joined the group as Maddie made her wish and blew out the candles. Everyone applauded and started discussing cake preferences, but I offered to get more coffee from the kitchen. What I really wanted was a moment to think. Standing at the counter, I tried to process what I was seeing. Lisa had been distant for months, but I'd attributed it to work stress and the normal ups and downs of a long marriage. The new clothes, the extra attention to her appearance, the mysterious text messages she quickly hid when I walked into a room. I'd noticed it all, but hadn't wanted to face what it might mean, and Tyler. He was 21, confident, and undeniably attractive in that clean-cut college way. He paid attention to Lisa, complimented her, treated her like she was interesting and important. When was the last time I'd done that? I was reaching for the coffee pot when I heard Lisa's voice from the hallway. "We need to be more careful," she whispered. "Tom's starting to notice." "Let him notice," Tyler's voice replied. "I'm tired of pretending. Maybe it's time to—" They stopped talking abruptly, and I realized they'd heard my footsteps. By the time I reached the hallway with the coffee pot, they were standing several feet apart, both looking guilty as teenagers caught sneaking out. "Coffee, anyone?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. "That would be great," Lisa said quickly. "Tyler was just telling me about his plans for winter break." "Fascinating," I said. "I'd love to hear all about it." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of strained normalcy. Guests complimented the meal, Maddie opened her presents, and everyone pretended we were having a wonderful time. But I couldn't shake the image of Lisa and Tyler whispering in the hallway, or the way they carefully avoided looking at each other for the rest of the night. By 10 o'clock, everyone had gone home except Tyler, who was helping Maddie with some college project upstairs. Lisa was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher with mechanical precision. "Good party," I said, joining her at the sink. "I thought it went well," she replied without looking at me. "Janice seemed to enjoy herself." "And Tyler certainly made himself at home?" Lisa's hand stilled for just a moment. "He's a nice boy, polite. Maddie's lucky to have found someone so mature." "Mature. Right." I dried a serving bowl slowly, choosing my words carefully. "You two seem to have developed quite a friendship?" "I'm just trying to be welcoming. You should be happy I'm making an effort with Maddie's boyfriend." "Oh, I am. It's just interesting how much effort you're making. All those conversations about his future, giving him career advice, very motherly of you." Lisa turned to face me then, her expression guarded. "What exactly are you trying to say, Tom?" Before I could answer, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Tyler appeared in the kitchen doorway, car keys in hand. "I should head home," he said. "Thank you for dinner, Mrs. Rourke. Everything was delicious." "You're very welcome," Lisa replied, her voice warm. "Drive safely." I watched Tyler leave, noting how Lisa's eyes followed him to the door. When she turned back to the dishes, she was humming softly, something she only did when she was genuinely happy. That night, lying in bed while Lisa scrolled through her phone beside me, I stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of what I'd observed. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I was a jealous husband seeing threats where none existed. But the whispered conversation in the hallway kept replaying in my mind. "We need to be more careful." Tom's starting to notice. I rolled over and closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come easily. Instead, I found myself planning. If Lisa was having an affair with my daughter's boyfriend, I needed proof. And if I found that proof, I'd need to decide what to do with it. One thing was certain. I wasn't going to be the clueless husband who got blindsided by his wife's betrayal. If Lisa wanted to play games, I'd learn the rules fast enough. The turkey might have been dry, but this Thanksgiving had served up something far more interesting than dinner conversation. It had given me a mission. The next morning arrived with a kind of gray November drizzle that matched my mood perfectly. Lisa was already gone when I woke up. Another early meeting that seemed to happen more frequently these days. She'd left a note on the kitchen counter about picking up some things for Maddie's care package, written in her careful handwriting that somehow looked guilty even on paper. I made coffee and sat at our kitchen table, staring out at the neighbor's fence and thinking about my next move. 30 years of marriage don't prepare you for becoming a detective in your own home, but I was a quick learner when motivated. My phone buzzed with a text from Pete, my business partner at the auto shop. "How was the family feast? Survive another year of Lisa's turkey?" I typed back, "Turkey was fine. Everything else needs some investigation." Pete knew better than to ask follow-up questions over text, but I could practically hear his curiosity through the phone. We'd been friends since high school, and he'd watched my marriage go through its various phases with the loyalty of a brother and the discretion of a priest. The house felt different with Lisa gone. I found myself looking at familiar spaces with new eyes, searching for clues I might have missed. Her purse usually sat on the counter by the phone, but lately she'd been taking it everywhere, even to the bathroom. Her laptop, once casually left open on the dining room table, now disappeared into her home office every night. I decided to start with what I could observe legally and ethically. If Lisa was having an affair, there would be patterns, changes in routine, unexplained absences, new behaviors. I'd been a mechanic long enough to know that problems rarely appeared overnight. Usually there were warning signs you could spot if you knew what to look for. My phone rang, interrupting my detective thoughts. Maddie's name appeared on the screen. "Hey, kiddo, how's the post-birthday recovery going?" "Dad, can I ask you something?" Her voice had that serious tone she'd inherited from me, direct and no nonsense. "Shoot. Is everything okay with you and Mom?" The question hit harder than I'd expected. "What makes you ask?" "I don't know. Last night felt weird. You guys were acting strange, and Tyler mentioned that Mom's been texting him a lot lately, like more than she texts me." My grip tightened on the phone. Texting him about what? He said she asks about his classes, his schedule, stuff like that. He thinks she's just being nice, but it seems kind of intense for a mom-in-law type relationship. We're not even engaged or anything. "No, you're not," I agreed, perhaps too quickly. "Dad, are you worried about something?" I looked out the kitchen window at our quiet suburban street, where normal families were probably having normal post-holiday conversations that didn't involve suspecting your spouse of inappropriate relationships. "I'm just paying attention, Maddie. Sometimes that's all you can do." "Okay. Well, if something's going on, you know you can talk to me, right? I'm not a kid anymore." "I know you're not. But let me handle whatever this is, okay? You focus on school and being 19. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen and let the reality settle in. If Maddie was noticing the texting, it wasn't just my imagination. Lisa was pursuing something with Tyler, and she wasn't being particularly subtle about it. I spent the morning doing what I should have been doing all along, really looking at Lisa's behavior over the past few months. The new gym membership she'd mentioned but never talked about in detail. The way she'd started wearing perfume to run errands. The mysterious phone calls she took in the garage or the basement, always explaining them as work-related when I asked. Around noon, Lisa returned home with shopping bags and a guilty expression that she tried to hide behind cheerful chatter about sales and holiday preparations. "How was your morning?" she asked, unpacking items that looked more like gifts for a young man than care package supplies for our daughter. "Quiet," Maddie called. Lisa's hands paused for just a moment. "Oh, how's she doing?" "Fine. She mentioned that Tyler's been getting a lot of texts from you lately." The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Lisa resumed unpacking, but her movements were more careful now, deliberate. "I'm just trying to be supportive. He's important to Maddie, so he's important to us." "Right, us." I leaned against the counter, watching her face. "What kind of support does a 21-year-old college student need from his girlfriend's mother?" "Advice, encouragement. You know how hard it is to navigate college and plan for the future." "Actually, I don't. I went straight to work after high school, remember? But I imagine it's the kind of thing he could discuss with his own parents. Or his girlfriend." Lisa's cheeks flushed. "You're making this sound like something it's not, Tom?" "What am I making it sound like?" She turned to face me fully, and for a moment I saw something flicker in her eyes. Defiance, maybe, or resignation. "You're making it sound inappropriate. I'm being friendly and welcoming to our daughter's boyfriend. I thought you'd appreciate that I'm making an effort." "I'd appreciate honesty more." The words hung in the air between us. Lisa stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating, deciding how much to reveal or deny. "I don't know what you think is going on," she said finally. "But you're wrong." "Am I?" "Yes. You're being paranoid and jealous, and it's not attractive. She grabbed her purse and headed toward the stairs. I have some work to catch up on. We'll talk about this later when you are being more reasonable. I watched her disappear into her home office, then heard the door close with more force than necessary. The conversation had confirmed what I'd suspected. Lisa was defensive because she had something to defend. But I still needed proof. That afternoon, I did something I'd never imagined myself doing. I drove to Tyler's apartment complex. I wasn't planning to confront him or break into his place like some deranged stalker. I just wanted to understand the geography of whatever was happening. Where did he live? How convenient was it to my house, to Lisa's work, to the places she claimed to be when she disappeared for hours at a time? Tyler lived in one of those generic student housing complexes near the college, identical buildings arranged around a central parking lot, designed for temporary residents who didn't plan to stay long. I parked across the street and observed the layout, noting the coffee shop next door and the gym down the block. The gym, Lisa's mysterious new membership. I pulled out my phone and called the fitness center where Lisa claimed to work out. A cheerful receptionist answered on the second ring. "Hi, I'm wondering about membership options for my wife," I said. "She mentioned she's been coming to your location, but I wanted to surprise her with a couples package. Her name's Lisa Rourke." "Let me check our system," the receptionist said. I heard typing in the background. "I'm sorry, but I don't see a Lisa Rourke in our member database. Are you sure she has a membership here?" "Maybe she's using her maiden name? Lisa Patterson?" More typing. "No, I don't see that either. Would you like information about starting a new membership?" I thanked her and hung up, staring at Tyler's apartment building with new understanding. Lisa's gym membership was a lie, which meant her 3 times a week workout schedule was actually 3 times a week something else. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop following me around. We need to talk. Tonight. 8 p.m., Riverside Park." Lisa. She'd spotted me somehow, or Tyler had seen my car and warned her. Either way, my amateur surveillance had been blown. I texted back, "Fine." The rest of the afternoon crawled by. I tried to focus on normal activities, paying bills, checking work emails, pretending my marriage wasn't imploding in real time, but my mind kept circling back to the evening's confrontation and what I might learn. At 7:30, I drove to Riverside Park, a small recreational area by the river where families brought kids to feed ducks and teenagers went to avoid their parents. At this time of year, in the gathering darkness of late November, it was mostly deserted. Lisa was already there, sitting on a bench near the playground. She looked smaller than usual, wrapped in her winter coat with her hands shoved deep in her pockets. I sat down beside her, leaving space between us that felt like a canyon. "How long have you known?" she asked without looking at me. "Known what exactly?" "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Tom." I studied her profile in the dim light from the parking lot. "I've suspected something for a few weeks. Yesterday confirmed it. Today I started looking for proof." "And did you find it?" "Enough." Lisa was quiet for a long moment, watching a lone jogger pass under the streetlights along the river path. "It wasn't supposed to happen," she said finally. "But it did." "Yes." "With our daughter's boyfriend." "Yes." The simple admissions hit me like physical blows, even though I'd been preparing for this conversation all day. "How long?" I asked. 6 weeks, maybe 7. "How did it start?" Lisa turned to look at me then, and I saw tears in her eyes. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me." She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "He came over one afternoon when Maddie was at class. She'd forgotten some books, and he was going to pick them up for her. We started talking, and he was so interested. In me, in what I had to say. When was the last time you asked me about my day and actually listened to the answer? So this is my fault? No, it's my fault. But Tom, we've been strangers living in the same house for years. You know we have." I wanted to argue, but she wasn't entirely wrong. We'd fallen into the comfortable routines of a long marriage, taking each other for granted in the way that couples do when they assume they have forever to figure things out. "That doesn't justify sleeping with our daughter's boyfriend," I said. "I know." "She loves him, Lisa. She thinks she might marry him someday." "I know." "And you decided your midlife crisis was more important than her happiness." Lisa flinched. "It's not a midlife crisis. I don't know what it is. But it's not some cliché about turning 40 and buying a sports car." "No, it's worse. It's destroying our family for a 21-year-old who's going to dump you the second this gets complicated." "You don't know him like I do." The naivety in her voice would have been touching if it weren't so destructive. "Lisa, he's a college student having an affair with his girlfriend's mother. What exactly do you think his long-term intentions are?" Maybe we don't need long-term intentions. Maybe some things are worth it just for how they make you feel. I stood up from the bench, suddenly unable to sit still. What happens now? I don't know. Are you going to end it? I don't know. Are you going to tell Maddie? I can't. So you want to keep lying to our daughter while you continue sleeping with her boyfriend? I want to figure out what I want without being pressured and judged. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You want to have your cake and eat it too, keep the stable marriage and the exciting affair, and let everyone else deal with the consequences. That's not fair. None of this is fair, Lisa. Fair would have been talking to me about whatever problems we have in our marriage before you decided to solve them in Tyler's bed. She stood up too, facing me across the space between us. What are you going to do? I honestly don't know yet. Are you going to tell Maddie? I don't want to, but I won't lie to her if she asks me directly. Tom, please. She doesn't need to know about this. It would destroy her. Then maybe you should have thought of that before you started it. Lisa began crying in earnest now, and despite everything, I felt a stab of sympathy for her. But sympathy wasn't going to fix this mess or undo the choices she'd made. I should go, I said. We both need time to think. Tom, wait. She reached for my arm. I do love you. This thing with Tyler, it doesn't change that. I looked down at her hand on my sleeve, then back at her face. Yeah, it does, Lisa. It changes everything. I walked back to my car, leaving her standing by the playground in the gathering darkness. The drive home was a blur of streetlights and stop signs, my mind already moving past the shock of confirmation to the harder question of what came next. By the time I pulled into our driveway, I'd made my first decision. I wasn't going to be the passive victim in this situation, waiting around for Lisa to choose between her husband and her lover. If she wanted to blow up our family, fine, but she was going to face the consequences of that choice. I had some planning to do. I woke up the next morning with the clarity that comes after a sleepless night of decision-making. Lisa's side of the bed was empty. She'd spent the night in the guest room, probably texting Tyler about our conversation. The thought should have made me angry, but instead I felt oddly calm. The uncertainty was over. Now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. My phone showed 3 missed calls from Pete and a text. You okay? Shop opens in an hour, but I can handle things if you need time. I texted back, on my way, we need to talk. Henderson's auto shop sat on a busy street lined with small businesses that had survived multiple economic downturns through sheer stubbornness and community loyalty. Pete and I had bought it from Old Man Henderson 5 years ago, and we'd built a reputation for honest work and fair prices. It was the kind of place where regulars brought us coffee and asked about our families. Pete was already there when I arrived, bent over the engine of a Honda Civic that had seen better decades. He straightened up when he heard my footsteps, taking one look at my face and reaching for the shop rag to clean his hands. Coffee's fresh, he said. You look like you need it. We settled in the small office at the back of the shop, surrounded by invoices and parts catalogs that represented the normal, predictable world I'd been living in until yesterday. Lisa's having an affair, I said without preamble. Pete set down his coffee mug carefully. You sure? She admitted it last night. It's been going on for 6 or 7 weeks. Anyone I know? Tyler, Maddie's boyfriend. Pete's expression shifted from sympathy to disgust. Jesus, Tom, that's... Yeah. What are you going to do? I'd been asking myself the same question all night. The conventional wisdom said I should try counseling or give Lisa an ultimatum or focus on saving the marriage for Maddie's sake. But conventional wisdom assumed both parties wanted to save something worth saving. I'm going to make sure she understands the full cost of her choices, I said. Pete studied my face. That sounds ominous. Not ominous, just thorough. I spent the morning working on routine repairs, letting the familiar rhythm of diagnostic and solution calm my mind while I planned my next moves. Lisa thought she could compartmentalize her affair, keeping it separate from the rest of her life. But affairs weren't compartmentalized things. They were like cracks in an engine block, spreading damage to every connected system. Around noon, my phone rang. Maddie's number. Dad, have you talked to Mom today? Not since last night. Why? She's acting really strange. She called me this morning in tears, saying she loved me and hoped I knew that no matter what happened, she'd always be proud of me. It sounded like she was about to do something serious or final. I closed my eyes. Lisa was panicking, probably realizing that her confession had started a chain of events she couldn't control. I'm sure she's just feeling emotional after the holiday, I said. You know how your mom gets. Maybe. But Dad, if something's wrong, you'd tell me, right? I mean, I'm an adult. I can handle whatever it is. If there's something you need to know, I'll tell you, I promise. After we hung up, I sat in my truck in the shop parking lot and considered my options. I could take the high road, keep Lisa secret, and try to work things out privately. But the high road assumed Lisa wanted to work things out, and her behavior suggested otherwise. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This is Tyler. We need to talk." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "Shop address is 1247 Industrial Boulevard. Come by after 5. The rest of the afternoon dragged by. Pete kept glancing at me with concern, but he knew better than to push for details I wasn't ready to share. By closing time, I'd changed the oil in 6 cars and replaced 2 sets of brake pads, but my mind had been elsewhere entirely. Tyler arrived at 5:15, driving the red Mustang convertible that had probably impressed plenty of college girls. He looked nervous but determined as he walked into the shop, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. "Mr. Rourke." "Tyler." We faced each other across the garage bay like gunfighters in a Western movie. He was taller than me by a few inches, with the kind of lean build that came from youth rather than work. But his confidence seemed forced, and I could see uncertainty in his eyes. "I guess you know," he said. "I know enough." "Look, I didn't plan for this to happen. It just did." "Things don't just happen, Tyler. People make choices." He shifted his weight from foot to foot. "You're right. I made choices. We both did." "And now you want to explain those choices to me?" "I want to make sure you understand that this isn't some casual thing. I care about Lisa. A lot." The earnestness in his voice might have been touching if it weren't so naive and destructive. "You care about her," I repeated. "Enough to lie to your girlfriend every day. Enough to sneak around behind her family's back. Enough to help destroy her relationship with her parents." "Maddie doesn't have to know." "Maddie already suspects something. She's not stupid, Tyler. Neither am I." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that probably worked well with his college friends but looked childish here in the real world of consequences and responsibilities. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "I want you to think about what you're really doing here. You're 21 years old, about to graduate college, with your whole life ahead of you. Lisa is 39, married, and the mother of your girlfriend. What exactly do you see as the end game?" "I don't know. Maybe there doesn't have to be an end game." "There's always an end game, Tyler. Always. And in this case, it involves my daughter getting her heart broken by someone she trusts, my marriage ending, and your reputation being destroyed when people find out you were sleeping with your girlfriend's mother." The color drained from his face. "You wouldn't tell people." "I wouldn't have to. These things have a way of coming out." Tyler was quiet for a long moment, staring at the concrete floor of the garage. When he looked up, there was something different in his expression, harder, more calculating. "Lisa said you two have been having problems for years. She said you barely talk anymore, that you treat her like a roommate instead of a wife. And that justifies this?" "It explains it." I stepped closer to him, close enough that he had to look up to meet my eyes. "Let me explain something to you, Tyler. Marriage takes effort. Real effort, not the kind you put in for a semester before moving on to something more exciting. Lisa and I have been together for 20 years. We've faced job losses, family hardships, raising a child, and all the ordinary, unglamorous things that make up real life. If she was unhappy, she had choices. She could have talked to me, suggested counseling, or asked for a separation. Instead, she decided to handle her problems by getting involved with someone young enough to be her son. I'm not a boy." "You're acting like one." Tyler's jaw tightened. "Nah, you can't stop this, Mr. Rourke. Lisa's an adult. She can make her own choices." "You're absolutely right. She can make her own choices. But choices have consequences, and I'm going to make sure she understands all of them." "What's that supposed to mean?" I smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. "It means you both might want to think carefully about how public you want this situation to become." Tyler stared at me for a moment, then turned and walked back to his car without another word. I watched him drive away, noting the way his hands shook slightly as he gripped the steering wheel. That evening, Lisa came home late with takeout Chinese food and a cautious expression. We ate in relative silence, both of us aware that we were navigating a new and dangerous landscape. "Tyler said he talked to you today," she said finally. "He did. What did you tell him?" "The truth, that actions have consequences." Lisa set down her chopsticks. "Tom, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But please don't do anything to hurt Maddie." "I'm not the one hurting Maddie, Lisa." "You know what I mean." I looked across the table at my wife of 20 years, trying to reconcile the woman I'd married with the stranger who'd been lying to me for weeks. "What I know," I said, "is that you started something you can't control, and now you're asking me to help you manage the fallout." I'm asking you to think about our daughter. I think about our daughter every day. The question is whether you were thinking about her when you started this affair? Lisa's eyes filled with tears again, but I was becoming immune to her emotional displays. Tears were easy. Fixing the damage she'd caused would be much harder. I'm going to stay at Janice's tonight, I said, standing up from the table. I need some space to think. Tom, please don't go. We can work this out. Can we? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you want to keep both your husband and your boyfriend, and you're hoping I'll be understanding enough to let that happen. That's not what I want. Then what do you want, Lisa? She was quiet for a long moment. I want to not have to choose. Well, that's too bad, because you're going to have to. I packed a bag and drove to Janice's house, where my sister took one look at my face and poured 2 glasses of wine without asking questions. Lisa, she said simply. Lisa. How bad? Bad. Janice nodded and handed me a glass. What do you need? Time to think, and maybe some advice on private investigators. My sister raised an eyebrow but didn't ask for details. She'd been through her own messy divorce 2 years earlier, and she understood that sometimes the high road wasn't an option. I know someone, she said. Discreet, professional, reasonable rates. Good. We sat in her living room, drinking wine and watching the news, both of us lost in our own thoughts. Finally, Janice turned to me with the expression she'd worn since we were kids when she was about to say something I didn't want to hear. Tom, I have to ask, are you sure you want to go down this road? What road? The revenge road. The making her pay road, because once you start that journey, it's hard to turn back. I considered her question seriously. She was right. There was still time to take a different approach, to try counseling or mediation or one of the other civilized ways people dealt with marital problems. But those approaches assumed both parties wanted to save the marriage. Lisa had made her priorities clear when she chose to betray not just me, but our daughter as well. She made her choice, I said finally. Now I'm making mine. Janice nodded slowly. Okay then, let's make sure you do it right. That night, lying on my sister's couch and staring at the ceiling, I began planning in earnest. Lisa thought she could compartmentalize her affair, keeping it separate from the rest of her life. But I was about to teach her that some actions couldn't be contained. She wanted excitement and passion and the thrill of a secret romance? Fine. But she was going to discover that secrets had a way of becoming very public, very quickly. And when that happened, she'd learn the difference between the fantasy of an affair and the reality of its consequences. The private investigator Janice recommended turned out to be Ray Morrison, a guy I'd known in high school who'd gone into police work before starting his own security business. Ray had the kind of face that people forgot 5 minutes after meeting him, which probably made him very good at his job. We met at a diner on the edge of town, the kind of place where truckers stopped for coffee and the waitresses called everyone Han. Ray slid into the booth across from me looking like any other middle-aged guy in work clothes, but his eyes were sharp and assessing. Janice filled me in on the basics, he said after we'd ordered coffee. Cheating wife, daughter's boyfriend, messy situation all around. That covers it. What exactly do you want from me? I'd been thinking about that question for 2 days. Documentation. Proof of what's happening, when, where. Enough evidence that she can't deny it or minimize it. You planning to divorce her? I don't know yet, but I want options. Ray nodded. I can do surveillance, document meetings, get photos if needed, standard adultery investigation. But Tom, I have to ask, you sure you want to know everything? Sometimes ignorance really is bliss. Too late for ignorance. Fair enough. We spent the next hour going over details, Lisa's schedule, Tyler's apartment, the places they might meet. Ray explained his methods and fees with the matter-of-fact professionalism of someone who'd seen this story play out dozens of times. One more thing, he said as we prepared to leave. What's your timeline? Some guys want this wrapped up quick, others prefer to let it play out naturally. I want enough evidence to make my point, but I also want to control when and how this comes to light. Understood. That afternoon, I went back to work and tried to focus on normal life. Pete could tell something was happening, but he respected my privacy and kept the conversation focused on carburetors and brake pads. It felt good to work with my hands, to solve problems that had clear solutions and predictable outcomes. Around 3 o'clock, my phone buzzed with a text from Lisa. Can we talk tonight? I think we need to discuss next steps. I texted back, I'm staying at Janice's until further notice. Tom, please. We can't solve this if we're not communicating. We can't solve this, period. You made sure of that. She didn't respond, which was probably wise. That evening, Ray called with his first report. Your wife met the boyfriend at that coffee shop near his apartment, he said. Stayed about an hour, left separately. Nothing too dramatic, but definitely not a casual encounter. They were holding hands across the table, and she kissed him goodbye in the parking lot. Any chance it was innocent? Not unless innocent means something different than it used to. I thanked Ray and hung up, staring at Janice's television without seeing it. Part of me had still been hoping I was wrong, that Lisa's confession had been some kind of emotional exaggeration. But the evidence was mounting, and my wife was continuing her affair even after admitting it to me. The next morning brought a call from Maddie. "Dad, what's going on? Mom said you're staying at Aunt Janice's, and she's been crying all morning." I closed my eyes. "Your mom and I are having some problems. We're taking some time to figure things out." "What kind of problems?" "The kind that adults need to work through privately." "Dad, I'm 19. I'm not a child. If you guys are getting divorced or something, I have a right to know." She was right, but I wasn't ready to destroy her world just yet. "We're not making any big decisions right now. We're just taking some space." "Is there someone else?" The directness of the question caught me off guard. "Why would you ask that?" "Because Mom's been acting weird for months, and now you're suddenly living at Janice's. It's not exactly rocket science." I found myself at a crossroads. I could lie to protect Maddie's feelings, or I could tell her the truth and let her deal with the consequences. "Maddie, I love you, and whatever happens between your mom and me, that won't change. But I can't discuss the details of our marriage problems with you. It wouldn't be fair to anyone. So there is someone else." "I can't. Is it Tyler?" The silence stretched between us like a chasm. Maddie was smart, observant, and she'd been watching the same strange dynamics I'd noticed. "Dad?" "Maddie, I think you should talk to your mom." Oh God, it is Tyler. I heard her start crying, and my heart broke for her. This was exactly what I'd wanted to avoid, but Lisa's choices had made it inevitable. "Honey, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." "How long have you known?" "A few days." "How long has it been going on?" "I don't know all the details." "But you know enough." "Yeah, I know enough." We were both quiet for a moment. Then Maddie's voice came back, harder and angrier than I'd ever heard it. "I'm going to confront them. Maddie, wait." "No, I'm not waiting. I'm not pretending I don't know. They've been lying to me for weeks, making me look like an idiot. Let me handle this. You've been handling it by hiding at Janice's. That's not handling it, Dad. That's avoiding it." She hung up before I could respond. I called Lisa immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried Tyler's number, which I'd gotten from Maddie's phone the week before, but he didn't answer either. 20 minutes later, my phone rang, Lisa, sobbing. "Tom, you have to get over here. Maddie knows. She came home and started screaming at me, and then Tyler showed up and she went crazy. She threw her promise ring at him and told him to get out, and now she's locked in her room and won't talk to me." "I'll be right there." The drive home felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. I found Lisa sitting on the front porch, mascara streaked down her face, looking like she'd aged 5 years in one afternoon. "Where's Tyler?" I asked. "Gone." Maddie told him if she ever saw him again, she'd make sure everyone at school knew what kind of person he was. "And Maddie?" "Upstairs. She won't come out. Tom, she hates me. My own daughter hates me." I wanted to feel sorry for Lisa, but mostly I felt tired. What did you expect would happen? I thought we could figure this out without involving her. "You involved her the moment you started sleeping with her boyfriend?" Lisa flinched but didn't argue. We sat on the porch in silence, listening to the normal sounds of our suburban neighborhood. Kids playing, dogs barking, lawnmowers running, normal life continuing around us while our family fell apart. "I ended it," Lisa said quietly. "What?" "With Tyler. I told him it was over." "When?" "Just now. When Maddie was screaming at both of us, I realized what I'd done, what I'd risked. I told him to leave and not come back." I studied her face, looking for signs that she was lying. "Just like that?" "Just like that." "And how did he take it?" Lisa's expression darkened. "Not well. He said some things. I realized I didn't know him as well as I thought I did." "What kind of things?" "He called me pathetic. Said I was a desperate middle-aged woman who'd ruined my family for a few weeks of excitement. He said he never cared about me, that it was just convenient." Despite everything, I felt a flash of anger on Lisa's behalf. Tyler had been a willing participant in this mess, and now he was trying to make Lisa the villain. "I'm sorry," I said. "Are you?" I considered the question. "I'm sorry he hurt you. I'm not sorry it's over." Lisa nodded. "I know I don't have the right to ask, but is there any chance we can fix this? Any chance you can forgive me?" I looked at my wife of 20 years, sitting on our front porch with tears streaming down her face, asking for forgiveness after destroying our daughter's trust and our family's stability. I don't know, I said honestly. Right now, I need to focus on Maddie. She's the innocent victim in all this. She won't talk to me. Can you blame her? No. I stood up. I'm going to try to talk to her. Then I'm going back to Janice's. We all need more time to process this. Tom? Yeah? I really am sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that. I looked down at her, this woman I'd loved for half my adult life, who'd just learned the hard way that fantasies and reality were very different things. I know you are, I said, but sorry doesn't undo the damage. I went upstairs to Maddie's room and knocked gently on the door. Maddie, it's Dad. Go away. I'm not going anywhere. We need to talk. After a moment, I heard the lock turn. Maddie opened the door, her eyes red and swollen from crying. How could she do this to me? She asked. I pulled her into a hug, holding my daughter while she cried against my shoulder. I don't know, honey. I really don't know. And Tyler, I thought he loved me. I thought we might get married someday. I know. How long have they been lying to me? Too long. We sat on her bed, and I tried to find words that might help her make sense of something that didn't make sense to any of us. Maddie, what your mom did was wrong. Completely wrong, but she's still your mother, and she loves you. If she loved me, she wouldn't have done this. People make terrible mistakes sometimes, even people who love us. Are you going to divorce her? I don't know yet. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out how to move forward. I don't think I can forgive her. You don't have to decide that today, or tomorrow, or next week. Maddie was quiet for a moment. Dad, I'm sorry I figured it out and forced everything into the open. I know you were trying to protect me. You don't have anything to apologize for. You deserved to know the truth. What happens now? I looked around her childhood bedroom with its mix of high school memories and college textbooks and tried to imagine what our family would look like going forward. Now we figure out how to rebuild, I said. All of us, separately and together. Will we be okay? We'll be something, I said. Maybe not the same as before, but something. That night, back at Janice's house, I sat on the couch and took stock of the situation. Lisa had ended the affair, Maddie knew the truth, and Tyler was out of the picture. In some ways, the crisis had resolved itself. But the damage was done. Trust had been broken, relationships had been shattered, and the comfortable routines of our family life had been destroyed. We were all going to have to figure out who we were now, in this new reality that Lisa's choices had created. The question was whether we'd figure it out together or apart. I was beginning to think I knew the answer.